I just want to start out by saying that I know how this sounds. In light of recent events in the media, whether they are true or not, it just seems like the right time to share my story. This happened about 5 years ago now, and it's just as unexplainable to me now as it was all those years ago. It was a beautiful summer day, one of those days where you just want to be outside and enjoy sunshine. On this specific day, I was at my friend Joel's camp. He just bought a boat, and we were really excited to take it out and swim in the middle of the lake. Once we took the boat out into the lake, the first strange occurrence happened. Everything stopped working. Joel's boat and all his navigation equipment just stopped working. We didn't think too much about it since none of us were really boat people. I just assumed that this was normal on a boat. What was weird to us, though, was the fact that all of our phones had stopped working as well. I don't mean we just lost service, I mean they completely shut off. You really don't realize how much you rely on technology until it's not there. We didn't have GPS, we had no way to call for help. We were just sort of floating in the middle of the lake. As eerie and messed up as this situation sounds, we still weren't super freaked out. We had all made the best of the weird situation. And yeah, we decided to just party right there. It was still early enough in the afternoon that we had plenty of sunshine and drinks, so figured we'd just hang out, drink some beers, and revisit this in a couple hours, because the sun was still out. A couple hours later, I was a little buzzed and staring off the side of the boat. The water was calm, but then a few seconds later, a ton of bubbles formed, and then a strange and powerful current smashed into the side of the boat. The blast was so strong that it nearly knocked us all over. We tried to figure out what size fish could hit our boat that hard and create that much wake, and in a lake like this, it didn't seem possible. Just a few moments after the current, the water went calm again, and then the boat started up. We all looked at our phones, and they were all turned on as well. Whatever weird anomaly had happened, it seemed that it was all over now. Without wasting any time, we drove the boat back to Joel's as fast as we could, just in case the boat got messed up again. We docked, made some dinner, and then just chilled for the rest of the evening. It was about 10 o'clock, and we made a fire outside, and the evening had been going well. A little after 1 in the morning, everyone at the fire had either left or went to sleep except for Joel, my buddy Chris, and myself. The fire was going out, and we were finishing the last of our beers. As I was staring out at the lake, I thought I saw a small light on the horizon. At first I thought it was a boat, but then I saw the light was getting bigger. In just a few seconds, the small light was now a much bigger light, and it was hovering over the horizon. I pointed it out to Joel and Chris, and the three of us moved to the shoreline to get a closer look. As we stood there watching the ball of light dance on the water, a million sparks started to shoot out of the ball. It was mesmerizing and beautiful, even though it was completely unnerving. Now, this is the part I don't really know how to explain. We heard a loud noise. It sounded like the blast of a trumpet, but extremely loud. So loud that it forced us all to our knees. As the overbearing sound continued to blast, the light from the glowing ball became so bright we were forced to shut our eyes. Then the next thing we all remembered is waking up the next morning. We heard Joel's wife calling our name, and all three of us were on the ground in the backyard of the neighbor's house. We got up and went over to Joel's wife. We were really scared, shaken, and confused. We asked her if she had seen or heard anything, and she said she didn't. We couldn't believe it. She thought we were messing with her, and no matter how many times we told her we were serious, she just rolled her eyes at us. It took hours for her to finally believe us. She believed that we believed what we saw, but she wasn't so sure, and honestly, neither am I. Shortly after that night, I went to a few doctors and talked to some people, but I didn't have anything out of the ordinary medically. Whatever happened that night, I still can't explain. I do have theories, and I don't really want to admit to myself what they are because I know how insane I would sound. I have no idea what really happened. I wonder if there's anyone out there that would have a rational explanation of what happened to me that night. This is a story of something I experienced several years ago. I want to first say that this could, in theory, have been a number of things, but the truth is, whatever I saw in the woods that day still haunts my memories. It was already a really bad day for me because I had just broken up with my partner, and you know how that goes. I was really hurting. Decided to take a walk in the woods to clear my mind and have some peace and tranquility for a while in nature. So I left my phone in the car and I just started walking, which felt like for hours. I ended up finding a really beautiful cliffside that overlooked a sea of trees. It was one of the most breathtaking sights I have ever seen with my own eyes. I started making my way back to the car and I decided to take the long way back through the thick brush. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of direction and I knew where I was going. Well, this path proved to be a lot more complicated than I anticipated. I knew I was going in the right direction, but the path was pretty tough on me. Since I was already dedicated to going this way, I decided I had to push through. It was around dusk that I started to get paranoid and felt like I might be stuck in the woods when the sun goes down completely. I knew I wasn't too far away, but I still started to get anxious. As I was powering through the trees, I heard the sound of sticks snapping and breaking. I froze immediately. I figured maybe it was a deer, but I didn't want to assume since it's not completely unlikely to see a bear in these types of woods. I looked around quickly and I didn't see anything. I started to slowly move, looking left and right, trying to find the source of the loud snapping, and that was when I saw it. Through the cluttered tree line, I saw the silhouette of 4 figures moving. It was just dark enough that I couldn't really make out the details, but I could see the figures moving in seemingly random directions. Their legs sort of like slinked forward, and they were really tall, very skinny. I tried to get close. I was just generally curious, but still alert. And that's when I realized whatever I was looking at was definitely not human. The skin of these creatures was pale white. They didn't appear to be closed, but that I couldn't truly confirm. Their heads were really oddly shaped, but I couldn't make out the details of their faces. I just sort of stared in the bushes in disbelief, and then in a moment, they all just continued deeper in the opposite direction of me. When they were out of sight, I made a run for my car as fast as I could, and I managed to get out. I was relieved to realize that I was only about 10 minutes away when it was all said and done. When I got to my car, it was nearly completely dark. I drove off in silence, and I couldn't get the images of those humanoid creatures out of my head. I wish I could have seen the faces because that would have given me so much more information. I don't know what I saw that evening. Like, maybe it was extraterrestrial. Maybe I was just in some sort of depressed hallucination. Maybe it was a species in the woods that human beings don't know about. The hardest part for me is not knowing, and I just wish I had an answer to explain whatever it was that I saw that evening. Back in high school, my friends Drew and Scott were always over at my house. I had the hangout house where we would all get together every weekend. I had a finished basement where we could stay up all night and play video games. And the older we got, the better my basement became because we started to invite girls over and the basement was secluded enough that we felt like we had privacy. One weekend during our junior year of high school, Scott informed us that his grandparents were going out of town and we could throw a huge rager epic party there. Basically, the plan was that Scott and Drew would tell their parents they were coming to my house, as they always would, and I was going to tell my parents that I was going to Scott's. And the plan seemed foolproof, so we were ready for the ultimate Saturday night. So the Saturday night came, and we had a pretty huge party going on. We weren't worried about getting into trouble either because Scott's grandparents lived in the middle of nowhere, basically. I don't know how many acres they had exactly, but I know they had a ton of land. There were forests as far as you could see in the backyard, and that all belonged to his grandparents. Tons of people from school came to the party, and I'm not going to lie, it definitely got a little out of hand. We had a hard time enjoying the party because we kept thinking about how long we were going to have to clean it up on Sunday. The party finally came to an end around 3 a.m. or so. I remember I was standing outside before passing out for the night, and I saw two girls emerge from the woods. I was terrified at first, seeing people walk out of the woods in the middle of the night is a bit jarring, but I realized quickly that it was two of my classmates. I tried calling out to them, but they didn't answer. They just kept walking by me like zombies. At one point, I said their name very loudly when they were pretty close to me, and they just kept walking right by me. They went inside the house, closed the door, and went to bed on the living room floor. I was very confused, and I kind of figured they were just drunk, or maybe messed up on something else. They were gone when I woke up, so I couldn't ask them what happened the previous night. I figured I would just ask them at school on Monday, so, I didn't think about it too much. Scott, Drew, and I spent several hours getting the house back in shape. Around 2 in the afternoon is when I finally told those two about the incident with the two girls the night before. They also thought it was pretty weird, so we just decided to go look in the woods where they came from just to make sure there wasn't any alcohol laying around there or potentially something worse. A little ways into the woods, Scott noticed some metal pieces on the ground. He called us over and we were shocked. It was a very bizarre, strange looking piece of metal, something that none of us had ever seen before. It was sort of bendable, but metal at the same time. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the best way I can describe it. That's when we noticed tons of that metal just littered around in the area. We picked a bunch of it up and tried to figure out what the heck it could be from, but we were clueless. We really had no idea. We Googled metals with this type of description, but we couldn't find an exact match. We would have never thought about any of this if it were not for what happened next. We just left the metal pieces there for now and decided that we would come back later to figure it out since we all had to get out of his grandparents' house before they got home. I don't know why we didn't take any of the strange metal pieces with us. I think we just figured, leave it there and we would come back to it. So as we were leaving the house and driving down the long, secluded, private road, we saw dozens of blacked out vehicles driving down the road. We were confused again because we were in the middle of nowhere, but we didn't think too much into it. That Monday, we asked the girls about the woods that night, and they had no memory of it at all, and one of the girls said she didn't even drink. Something strange was happening, and we just didn't have the answers for it. It was really unnerving and frustrating. Later in the week, we went back to Scott's grandparents' house, and his grandma looked really anxious. We asked what was going on, and she said that men in suits have been there every day, claiming that there was some sort of chemical leak nearby and it was affecting the forest, so they had to stay away from the woods. We couldn't believe it. When we left, we didn't go far. We parked the car on the side of the road and snuck back into the woods where the metal was, and we couldn't believe what we saw. Everything was gone. All the metal was missing. Whatever that strange material was, it was gone now, and I think that these mysterious men had something to do with it. After that afternoon, our minds ran totally wild. We started to think about possible answers to what happened that night. Someone we know told us that it sounded like something extraterrestrial in nature, but that can't be real, right? Did we somehow accidentally wander onto a crashed UFO site? Who were these men in black suits? And most importantly, what happened to the girls that night? Is it possible that this was just some insanely elaborate hoax? I don't know if I'll ever know.